What type of user do you keep in mind when designing a product and interface, when crafting copy? Is it a man? Is he quite well-off, white, cis, hetero? Or maybe it's a woman. Are they a person with any visible or non-visible disability? Are they any specific race or age? Are they you or someone very similar to you? Many studies have shown that the industry tends to design for a narrow demographic, frequently centering around white men. That is why some products may not meet the needs of diverse users. Have you heard of so-called racist soap dispensers that did not detect darker skin tones? It was actually due to biased design and testing practices. Those dispensers used infrared sensors that did not detect darker skin tones because they were tested on lighter skin during development. And do you know that women are around 50%, according to some sources even 80%, more likely than men to suffer serious injuries when in car crashes because cars, including seatbelts or airbags, are optimized for male anatomy? And women are not even a minority, at least not in the strict sense, because they account for roughly 49.6% of the world population. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever played a game and felt truly represented? Like the character on screen could be you? Anyone? And how many of you are women? Okay, quite many. I did not expect that result. I expected there will be very few women left. And my follow-up was that women are often misrepresented and over-sexualized in games, even though they account for more than half, because 52% of mobile game players in the US. And they're also said to be 79% more likely than men to make in-app purchases. So there is a lot of money to be made by being more welcoming towards women in this industry, but this will not be done by over-sexualizing them. All right, but does it matter to actual players if games are diverse or not? Like, should we care, or is this a made-up issue? 64 respondents said that diversity matters and that share increases with each generation. So for baby boomers, it's 35%, but it's 69 for Gen Z and 71 for Gen Alpha. So to answer this question, yes, we should care, especially if we want to reach those younger generations. Hello, everybody. I am Zuzanna. Thank you very much for coming here. I am a localization manager, a UX writer, copywriter, and diversity and inclusion advocate. And what are my credentials? Why am I talking about diversity and inclusion? Well, I am a woman. I am queer. I am neurodivergent, or how we like to call it, neurospicy. I wrote my bachelor's and master's thesis about gender-neutral language, and I've been inclusifying games at 10 Square Games since 2021. And our topic today, as you already know, is driving diversity and inclusion in games and beyond. So I'll be talking mostly about games, but those rules are pretty much universal. All right, and by the end of this talk, I want you to remember 3 things. First of all, build a diverse crew. It is much easier to make a product that's accommodating to, let's say, women and neurodivergent people if you have them in your team. Second, check, don't guess. Validate your assumptions by testing with real, diverse users. And if that's not possible, then do your research. Don't rely solely on your guesses or assumptions. And leverage AI. Use AI tools to identify biases and make your products more inclusive. And don't worry, it's not that hard. Sorry, I had to. All right, so for the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be talking about what are diversity and inclusion, some aspects of diversity and inclusion, then we'll deep dive into 4 and discuss them in more detail: inclusive language, localization, inclusive design, and representation, and then conclusion and maybe even Q&A. All right, let's make it easy. Let's simplify the terms diversity and inclusion. What is diversity? It's the practice of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc. And what about inclusion? It's the practice of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. And if you're looking at the two definitions and thinking that they're basically the same thing, then think of it that way. Diversity is the mix, and inclusion is making the mix work. So diversity is like having gay or black people in your company, and inclusion is how you treat them. All right, now let's make it a bit more complicated again. I'm pretty sure that if I asked you to name some keywords around diversity and inclusion, you would be able to name quite a few things, and also your ideas would vary from person to person. That's probably because there are quite many things around these topics. For example, inclusive language, mental health awareness, LGBTQ+ awareness, age and experience inclusion, socioeconomic inclusion, localization, awareness of stereotypes, cultural sensitivity, inclusive design, accessibility, narrative inclusion, community and player interaction, economical and technological accessibility, gender inclusion, representation. And due to time constraints, we'll be talking about 4: inclusive language, localization, inclusive design, and representation. And now, I'm not saying that these 4 are the only ones that matter and you can disregard the rest. It's just that these are what I specialize in, so I chose them for this presentation. All right, so let's start with inclusive language. I think that it's quite a big one because we use language basically all the time, if not actively, then passively. And sometimes, you know, small changes can make a major difference. So, what can we change? We can start with the basics, like using gender-neutral terms. For example, instead of policeman, police officer. Instead of welcoming people by saying, ladies and gentlemen, we can say, hello everybody, welcome, etc. Instead of saying he, him, to refer to the general public, like if I told you right now everybody should get his phone to take the picture of a presentation, that would not be right because there aren't only men here, so I would rather say everybody should get their phone. And instead of husband and wife, partner or spouse. Okay, next is to eliminate ableist language, starting with putting person first. For example, instead of wheelchair-bound, person using a wheelchair, and analogically, person with Down syndrome, etc. And the next 3 examples are connected with people using terms that are connected with mental disorders to offend somebody, to say that somebody is rude, obnoxious. And by doing that, I mean, I sometimes do it myself, I must admit. By doing that, we reinforce the idea that people with disabilities are somehow inferior. So, how to avoid that? Instead of saying that your ex is a psycho, you can say that he's a jerk. Instead of retarded, annoying or obnoxious, and instead of insane or crazy, intense, awesome, amazing. If you want to say that this presentation is crazy good, you can say that it's really good. And prioritizing accessibility. So use clear, simple, short messages to communicate with people. It's not only more accessible towards people with cognitive disabilities, but also with people who don't have time, are in a rush, or just don't feel like reading a lot of text. So instead of saying things like, you must log in before you can write a comment, we can say, log in to comment. Or we should also avoid using colors in instructions, because if we say something like, press the green button, not everybody will be able to tell which button is the green one, which is the red one. So saying stuff like, press continue, press OK, press next is better. And the last of us, part 2, is an example of a game that uses inclusive language. The characters are referred to with their chosen pronouns, and the game carefully avoids stereotyping or offensive language. Ellie, the protagonist, is a lesbian, and her sexuality is treated as a natural part of her character. The game also includes a transgender character, Lev, whose identity is handled with sensitivity. All right, and moving on to our next aspect, localization. For those of you who might not know, localization is adapting or customizing a product to, for it to meet the needs of a certain audience, certain market. So, for example, did you know that Pac-Man originally had a different name? It was pronounced in the same way, but spelled differently. Pac-Man like the hockey puck. But when the game was being localized for the US market, the company decided to change the name to Pac-Man because in the dim lights of the arcade, Pac-Man could have easily been misread as Pac-Man. And vandals would have a pretty easy job as well. All right, so language accessibility. First of all, not everybody speaks English. Shocker, right? Out of around 8.2 billion people, around 1.5 billion are English speakers. Still quite a lot, but by localizing a product, we make it accessible to a wider public, simultaneously increasing our potential player or user base. All right, and next, cultural relevance. Localization ensures that content is culturally appropriate and also resonates with local audiences. For example, in Animal Crossing, the localization team adapted certain events to different parts of the world. For example, in Japan, you can celebrate the event Shichi-Go-San, and in Western versions, events like Halloween or Thanksgiving were incorporated instead. And last, for localization, respecting cultural norms. So localization adapts content to align with regional customs, social norms, and the law. Do you know Team Fortress? Dying was localized in this game. In Germany, it is not considered child-friendly to be showing blood or severed body parts flying around. That is why when you launch this game in that country, well, the shot characters burst into gears and springs. Moving on to inclusive design and starting with prioritizing accessibility. By that, I mean all those customizable options like subtitles, colorblind modes, high contrast modes, customizable controls in games, etc. For example, in Fortnite, there are several colorblind options that players can turn on, and it helps players with color vision deficiencies distinguish between in-game elements. Next, test on diverse users. We wouldn't want to accidentally create the next racist soap dispensers or sexist seatbelts. That's why it's important to test with diverse users. This will help us identify issues that might otherwise have been omitted. Starting with indicating errors by colors only, like here, and ending with making buttons too small for translated texts to fit there. I hope that it's not that common anymore to test only in English, because English is quite a short language in comparison with, for example, Italian, French, Polish. And 3, iterative improvement. It's not easy and often not possible time and budget-wise to get everything right the first time around. That is why it's important to listen to users' feedback, iterate, and improve the product. And speaking of improvements and iterations, so far I've been showing you other people's games. Now let me show one of ours. This is Hunting Clash, and when I first opened this game, I was given a default nickname, Wild Cougar. For those might not know, cougar is, this wild animal, but also a woman, a middle-aged woman who likes younger men. And when you pair it with the adjective wild, it's, suggestive, if not sexist. So to avoid that, we change it. I sent this meme to the Hunting Clash team, and they got the hint. It says, cougar in the area, please stay on trails, travel in small groups, and do not allow men under 30 to travel alone. OK, and the last thing, representation. Diverse characters. It's important that characters in games, and not only, represent diverse races, genders, social backgrounds, sexual orientations, etc. And one game that really nailed it is Borderlands. It includes characters that fall into a minority, but without being defined by it. So they are complex characters that happen to be a minority, and not a minority that just happens to be a character. And authentic storytelling. OK, let's say that you have a game and you have this lesbian character, and she's got a buzz cut and she repairs cars. Is that authentic? I mean, questionably so. Games should tell stories that resonate with diverse audiences and avoid stereotyping and tokenisms. For example, in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, players can engage with relationships with characters of different genders, which reflects a more inclusive approach towards romance in games. In Stardew Valley, same-sex marriages are allowed. As the mayor of Pelican Town and regional bearer of the matrimonial seal, I now pronounce you husband and, well, husband. And do you know that game? The one that made you shoot aliens, go to BDSM dungeons, and blow up a whole city? Maybe this meme will jog your memory. What if I told you that this game was created by one of the most diverse teams? It's a great example that a game can be inclusive, diverse, anti-sexist, anti-racist, and still maintain a great portion of humor. So yes, diverse teams for the win. All right, but is it possible to make a game that's 100% inclusive, a game or any other product? Probably not, but we can try, and AI can help. Obviously, there are quite many tools that can help you with that, but I wanted to show you this one. I don't know if any of you uses Promptitude. It basically works like that. You write a prompt, and then you can pick ChatGPT, Gemini, or any other AI tool to generate the results for the prompt. So I wrote a prompt that scans the source text, looks for any potential biases, for stereotypes, etc., and then generates a result that's more inclusive. And in the source text, I pasted something that could be a part of our live event in Fishing Clash. And it says, hello, fishermen. Embark on a journey on a beautiful Florida fishery, complete tasks to become a master of Florida, and make all the other men jealous. And the result that the AI generated is hello, angler, and then Master of Florida was changed to Florida Fishing Champion, make all the other men jealous, make everyone jealous. And this is the prompt, so it's not very long. It could probably be optimized to generate even better results. But I tested it also in Polish, because Polish is sometimes more difficult than English to be made inclusive. And it did a good job as well. Cześć wędkarzu, cześć. Wyrusz wraz ze swoimi klanowiczami, wyrusz wraz z ekipą. Pokaż, że jesteś najlepszy, pokaż, że jesteś najlepszą osobą w łowieniu ryb. I odznaka najlepszego wędkarza, odznaka wędkarskiego asa. For those who don't speak Polish, you have to believe me that it did a pretty good job. Maybe najlepszą osobą w łowieniu ryb doesn't roll off the tongue easily, but it's inclusive, so it did the job. And sometimes we don't even have to prompt AI and ask it to provide us with suggestions because it does it on its own. I have the language tool as an add-on in Google, and when I typed in the word retarded in this presentation, it told me, watch out, because it might be considered offensive. And I think it's pretty cool that it does that. All right, and as I told you in the beginning, when you leave this place today, I want you to remember 3 things. First one, build a diverse crew. Bring people from diverse backgrounds for diverse ideas and inclusive designs. Check, don't guess. Validate your assumptions by testing with real, diverse users. Don't rely solely on your guesses. And leverage AI. Use AI tools that help identify biases and improve designs. And this is my farewell wish to you. May every day be not only Diversity Day, but Diversity and Inclusion Day, because diversity is the mix, and inclusion is making the mix work. Thank you very much for your attention.